What does a 16th century Portuguese explorer have in common with today's Wall Street traders? Well, the answer is more than you might think. The age of exploration wasn't just about discovering new lands. It was about money, risk, and investment. In fact, the maritime expansion, led by Portugal, helped lay the foundations for the modern stock market. In the 1400s and 1500s, Portugal was a very small country but with big ambitions. Led by Prince Henry the Navigator, Portuguese sailors ventured down the African coast, seeking gold, spices, and new trade routes. By the early 16th century, they had established a vast maritime empire, stretching from Brazil to India and China. These voyages weren't just about adventure, they were expensive business ventures. Funding a fleet required massive capital, and no single king or merchant could afford it alone. So, the Portuguese pioneered a system of shared investment, where multiple investors pooled their money into maritime expeditions. Sound familiar? That's because it's an early version of what we now call a joint stock company. Of course, exploration came with risk. Storms, piracy, and the possibility of never returning. To offset these dangers, Portuguese merchants developed sophisticated investment techniques. They spread their money across multiple voyages, diversifying risk, just like a modern-day investor diversifies their portfolio, basically. Now, while doing this, other European powers, of course, took notice. By the 1600s, the Dutch and British improved on this model, forming fully fledged joint stock companies like the Dutch East India Company, which was the world's first publicly traded corporation. Investors could now buy shares, reducing individual risk while funding a large-scale trade. Fast forward to today, and the principles behind Portuguese maritime investment live on in stock markets worldwide. Stocks allow companies to raise capital by selling shares, just as 16th century merchants raised money for voyages. And the core principles of risk assessment, diversification, and profit sharing remain unchanged. So the next time you hear about the stock market, remember, the roots of global finance stretch back to the age of exploration, when Portuguese sailors and merchants turned high seas adventures into a brand new economic model that still affects our world today. Now that was it. If you enjoyed this small historical journey, feel free to come back next Friday for the next one. See you!